If you're into videos about supernatural phenomena, unsolved mysteries, and true crime, you've come to the right channel. We upload new videos 2 to 3 times a week, so if this sounds like the content you enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss any of our weekly uploads. Now, let's dive into the video. The wind whispered through the narrow streets of Paris, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked cobblestones and burning lanterns. It was the year 1745, and the French capital was alive with intrigue, scandal, and the whispers of an enigmatic man who seemed to exist on the edge of both history and legend. The man's name, spoken in hushed tones at courts across Europe, was the Count of Saint Germain. Those who had met him marveled at his knowledge of alchemy, music, and science. Yet there was something more, something unnerving about him, something that made even the most powerful nobles feel small in his presence. On that stormy night, Saint Germain sat in a grand, dimly lit salon, surrounded by the elite of France. His dark hair, swept back from his pale face, gleamed in the candlelight, and his eyes, those unsettling, deep-set eyes, seemed to hold the secrets of centuries. He moved with a grace and confidence that belied his age. Or rather, that's what people could never quite figure out. The Count never appeared to age. Some claim to have met him 50 years earlier, and yet he looked exactly the same. To others, he was a ghost, an immortal, or perhaps something more sinister. Tonight his audience hung on his every word as he recounted tales of his travels through distant lands, of Persia, India, and Tibet, places that to most of his listeners were no more real than a fairy tale. His voice was smooth, hypnotic like a spell that drew them closer, pulling them into his web of mystery. "Imagine," he said, "a land where the mountains touch the sky, and the winds carry the voices of the ancients. There, in the hidden monasteries of Tibet, I was taught secrets that no European had ever known. How to turn base metals into gold, how to prolong life indefinitely." The room fell silent, breaths held, as though no one dared disturb the spell he had woven. A woman in a delicate lace gown, Madame de Pompadour no less, leaned in, her fan fluttering nervously in her hand. "And did you, monsieur?" she asked, her voice a near whisper. "Did you learn the secret to eternal life?" Saint Germain's lips curled into a cryptic smile. "Perhaps." It was that word, that single, lingering perhaps, that kept people captivated. He never answered questions directly. He never revealed too much. And yet, there were rumors. Wild rumors that stretched across Europe. Some said he had dined with Cleopatra, that he had known Jesus Christ, that he had advised kings for millennia. Of course, these stories were preposterous. Weren't they? The candle flames flickered as a cold gust of wind slipped through the cracks in the room, causing the chandelier above to sway. Saint Germain's eyes gleamed in the flickering light as though he could see beyond the walls of time itself. The Count rose from his chair, his dark cloak trailing behind him as he moved toward the window. He gazed out at the rain-drenched streets below, his expression unreadable. One of the men in the room, a skeptic with a sharp tongue and little patience for mystery, scoffed loudly. "All this talk of immortality and alchemy is nothing but fantasy, a clever ruse to impress gullible aristocrats. What proof do you have, Count?" Saint Germain turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the man. "Proof, monsieur?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "You want proof?" Before anyone could react, the Count reached into his coat and threw a small, intricately carved box. He opened it, revealing a single gemstone, a ruby, flawless and glowing with an inner light. The room gasped. "Behold," Saint Germain said, holding the gem up for all to see, "the Philosopher's Stone. With this, one can transform lead into gold, heal any wound, and cheat death itself." The skeptic's eyes widened in disbelief. He stepped forward, hands trembling, reaching for the stone, but Saint Germain snapped the box shut before he could touch it. "Not so fast," the Count said, his tone icy. "This is not a trinket for the curious. The power it holds is dangerous." The room erupted in murmurs, some intrigued, others frightened. It was clear that Saint Germain had something. Whether it was the true philosopher's stone or not, no one could say for certain. But in that moment, the Count seemed less a man and more a figure from myth, standing before them with the weight of centuries in his hands. After that night, the rumors only intensified. Some said that Saint Germain had not only mastered alchemy, but had the power to manipulate time itself. There were reports of him being seen in multiple places at once, of him predicting events long before they occurred. He vanished from Paris shortly after the Salon, only to reappear months later in London, where he dazzled the English court with his charm and knowledge. But it wasn't long before darker whispers began to circulate. There were stories of people who had crossed him, nobles who had insulted him or questioned his abilities, who had met untimely ends. Poisonings, accidents, mysterious disappearances. It was said that Saint Germain never raised a hand against anyone, but that his enemies simply ceased to exist. The most chilling of these stories came from Vienna. A wealthy baron, eager to test the Count's powers, had invited Saint Germain to his estate. He boasted to his guests that he would force the Count to reveal his secrets. That evening, as the baron raised his glass to toast his success, he collapsed, dead before he hit the floor. No mark was found on his body, no poison in his wine. Yet the Count had been the last to speak to him just moments before. In the years that followed, Saint Germain appeared in different cities across Europe, Berlin, Venice, St. Petersburg, always with the same ageless appearance, the same impossible knowledge. He was a diplomat, a scholar, a musician, and yet always a mystery. Kings and queens sought his counsel, while others feared his influence. Some claimed he was a spy, working for no one but himself, playing the great powers of Europe against each other like pawns on a chessboard. But what was most unnerving were the accounts of those who had seen him in centuries past. A Venetian noblewoman swore she had met him in 1710, looking exactly as he did now. A man in Lisbon claimed his father had seen him in 1675, still with the same youthful face and piercing eyes. And perhaps the strangest of all, an ancient manuscript discovered in a monastery in Transylvania described a man named Saint Germain attending a royal feast in 1459. The details matched perfectly, right down to the description of his eyes, the color of storm clouds over the sea. By the late 18th century, Saint Germain had vanished once again, this time seemingly for good. Some said he had retreated to a hidden sanctuary in the mountains of the east, where he would wait for the world to change once more. Others claimed he had ascended beyond this mortal realm, his work on earth finally complete. But the rumors never died. In the years that followed the French Revolution, there were sightings of a man resembling Saint Germain among the revolutionaries. He was seen at the execution of Louis XVI, standing calmly in the crowd as the king was led to the guillotine. He was seen in the courts of Russia, advising Catherine the Great. He was seen, always on the edges of history, never quite stepping into the spotlight, but always present, like a shadow that lingered just out of reach. And then, as quickly as he had come, the Count of Saint Germain disappeared from history altogether. His name faded into legend, a ghostly figure who had walked among kings and queens, emperors and scholars, leaving behind only questions and mysteries. To this day, some believe he was nothing more than a clever charlatan, a man who used science and illusion to deceive those around him. Others, however, remain convinced that the Count of Saint Germain was far more than a mere mortal, that he had unlocked the secrets of time and life itself, and that somewhere out there, he still walks among us, watching, waiting, and perhaps planning his return.